Interior Secretary Benhur Abalos has asked all police officers from the rank of colonel to general to resign.
Let us submit ourselves para matapos na yan. Para pagka na-clear ka, isaksak mo sa baga nila, yan o, cleaner ako ng 5-man committee. So nobody will now question at babalik ngayon yung moral ascendancy ng lahat ng third level. Ang on trial dito is our organization. We should think first of our organization and then the individual interest will follow.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. The big story tonight.
PNP Chief Rodolfo Azurin has tendered his courtesy resignation in response to the call from the Interior Department.
Other top-ranking police officials are seen to follow, but one advocacy group says this could lead to problems. Brian Castillo with the big story.
No less than PNP Chief Rodolfo Azurin Jr. took the call to tender his courtesy resignation. This comes a day after Interior Secretary Benhur Abalos appealed to top-ranking PNP officials to step down as part of internal cleansing within their ranks. Along with Azurin, PNP Deputy Chief for Administration Lieutenant General Rodel Sermonia and Deputy Chief for Operations Lieutenant General Benjamin Santos also turned in their resignations.
Lahat kami rito, yung command group ko, they have already submitted.
In his resignation letter addressed to the President, General Azurin said that he is willing to undergo evaluation and assessment to clear his name of involvement in the illegal drug trade. Other top cops like NCRPO Chief Junel Estomo and Manila Police District Director Police Brigadier General Andre Dizon also appear ready to accept the call. However, Azurin bears that there are also some officers who are hesitant in submitting their courtesy resignations.
These are their bread and butter. Ito yung karir nila. Sabi nga nila, para bang wala kaming ginawa for the last 30 years. But sabi ko, ang on trial dito is our organization. We should think first of our organization and then the individual interest will follow.
For former PNP Chief and Senator Panfilo Lacson, calling for courtesy resignations is a good way to fast-track internal cleansing. He added that wide-scale purging in the PNP had already been done during the time of former President Fidel Ramos.
Again, napakaraming dadaanan. So, baka tapos na yung termino, hindi pa na isasagawa yung o na isasakatuparan yung tinatawag na fresh start na pamunuan ng PNP.
However, for the Volunteers Against Crime and Corruption, this method can be problematic.
Yung chain of command dito medyo magugulo. What will happen kung courtesy resignation sa lahat ng general at mga full colonels? Pag pinag-resign mo yan, magkakaroon ng vacuum po dyan.
There are over 900 police officials with the ranks of colonel to general in the PNP. And out of that number, less than 10 officers are believed to be involved in illegal drug transactions based on initial investigations. Top police officials have until the end of the month to tender their courtesy resignations. Based on PNP rules, authorities have 30 days to act on the courtesy resignation before it becomes effective. As of now, there is no word yet on who will form the 5-member committee tasked to review the resignations. But the PNP has already submitted a short list of nominees for the President to choose from. While the committee has the power to identify policemen with links to illegal drug trade, it cannot strip confirmed narco cops of retirement benefits once they leave the service. For News 5, Brian Castillo, we are One News.
Just to reiterate and to clarify, all of these courtesy resignations being asked by the DILG is to cleanse the PNP ranks. So the courtesy resignations are for the appointed post only, not for the entire service. Those who would file their courtesy resignations will remain in their posts until such time that the committee of 5 accepts the resignations. If the committee deems them clean, the official may be allowed to return to his or her post. Courtesy resignations also will not affect retirement benefits of the police officers. To give us his insights on this internal cleansing in the National Police is Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong. Mayor Magalong is a former head of the CIDG. and he has served in the Philippine Constabulary and the Philippine National Police. Good evening, Mayor Magalong. Welcome to The Big Story.
Good morning, Robbie. Morning, Gretchen.
Sir,
Good morning, everyone.
good morning po and Happy New Year pa rin po sa inyo. I guess the basic question from the people right now is, will this work? Is this really for anything?
Yeah, alam mo, meron lang precedent to eh. If you remember, during the time of President Ramos, nagkaroon na rin ng ganitong klaseng process. In fact, iba naman yung situation noon. That was a supply mismanagement. This time, it's different. It's drugs. And we should be more resolved in pursuing the cleansing of the Philippine National Police. Kaya nga, this is not a major action on the part of the Secretary. I believe there was extensive, exhaustive, and intensive consultation with stakeholders. Kaya siguro nakapag-decide na ganito si Secretary Benher.
But what about any perhaps unintended consequences as a result of this? On the one hand, the VACC itself is saying that this could cause demoralization. You could also imagine a lot of cynical voices saying that what if this committee of 5, then basically says, oh, everybody's cleared. Then everybody comes back and it's as if it was that simple.
Alam niyo, yes, no, we should approach this with negative mindset. Alam mo, we should even thank the Philippine National Police and Department of Interior Local Government for coming up with this very risky na undertaking, but at the same time, very noble. Alam mo, yung Committee of 5, alam ko naman ang mga pipiliin dyan, yung mga well-accomplished, without any tainted character, may due diligence ang pagpili niyan. Ibig sabihin niyan, these are very competent people with no doubt on their integrity, reputation. Kaya itong mga members ng Committee of 5 will apply all the due process and due diligence in making sure that there is, that they come up with the right decision when it comes to determining yung sense o yung mga officers na tatanggalin nila o kaya i-retain nila. Kaya sana wag pangunahan.
Mayor, this call for resignation, some would say that, as you mentioned, it does seem noble, but on the other side to it, isn't that also absolution? If the retirement benefits are not affected and if they just get away with everything that they did, just like that?
Hindi naman. When in fact, right now, I'm pretty sure that the Philippine National Police, the CIDJ, and through its intelligence unit are already gathering all these pieces of evidence, pati na rin kasama na rito yung mga reliable information to support this cleansing na effort. And at the same time, alam mo, hindi naman basta-basta na lang na arbitrarily mag-decide yung Committee of 5. Actually, siguro magkakaroon ng demonstration. From what I heard inside the Philippine National Police Organization, once na nakintan ng mga of what's being done at yung talagang intention, a lot of them have changed their mind. Initially, talaga may opposition because they weren't aware of what's really going on. But when everything was explained to them, then majority of them actually are already aligned with the idea and by support of the leadership of the PNP. Tanda mo na, Gretchen and Robbie, these generals, especially the young generals and the colonels, will soon take the helm of leadership of the National Police, and we need to make sure that they are competent and at the same time they have the strong sense of integrity. That's the only way we will be able to gain trust and confidence of the public. Right now, because of this issue of drug involvement of senior officers, nawawalan tiwala ng gobyerno, nawawalan tiwala sa Philippine National Police, and that's a huge impact on the reputation of the Philippine National Police. with this cleansing action na initiated the SILG, sa tingin ko makikure lahat yan.
But one final question, Mayor Magalong. We do have systems and mechanisms for accountability in the PNP and for that matter in government. Won't this run the risk of short-circuiting that system and bringing about, a lot of, as we said, unintended consequences from demoralization to even politicizing the appointment of new officers?
Hindi naman siguro. I don't think so. It will offset yung action na to will offset the disadvantages or yung binanggit mo na risk, ano. And besides, we need to take action immediately. We have to look at things with a sense of urgency. Reputation of the Philippine National Police is at stake. Yung personal interest should be subverted and place the interest of the organization as a priority. It will cause widespread demoralization. I think among the junior officers, they like it. I have been talking to many junior officers, senior grade officers, middle grade officers. They like the idea, and they're very supportive of the SILG and the leadership of the police.
Sige, maraming salamat po. Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong. President Marcos brought home at least 14 deals from his first state visit to China. The highlight of his bilateral meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping is the discussion on issues in the West Philippine Sea. Marian Enriquez with the details.
The plight of Filipino fishermen in the West Philippine Sea was a hot topic in President Marcos' bilateral meeting with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. Marcos said they agreed to arrive at a compromise to allow Filipinos to fish in their natural fishing grounds.
We also discussed what we can do to move forward to avoid any possible mistakes, misunderstandings. The President promised that we would find a compromise and find a solution that will be beneficial.
To put this into action, the two leaders sealed an agreement to establish a communication mechanism on maritime issues. This is just one of the 14 bilateral deals Marcos signed with China during his state visit.
Sana yung Chinese members of the bilateral group have a direct access to the President. Ako naman, for my part, titiyakin ko yung mga nakaupo sa bilateral team natin ay may direct contact din naman sa atin para diretso, para hindi tayo nothing will be lost in translation.
The president hopes that this agreement will help ease tensions between the two nations in the West Philippine Sea.
Let's just call it an incident. Sana mabawasan na yun.
The president also confirmed that he and Xi also discussed the Code of Conduct for the South China Sea and the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. But Marcos did not provide more details on this. Recall that Marcos expressed hopes to reach finality on the Code of Conduct during the ASEAN Summit.
I think that they were in private discussion, so we have not yet formulated a complete, shall we say, position.
Chinese President Xi Jinping also offered to open talks on a joint gas and oil exploration deal with the Philippines. Aside from energy, Xi also promised to support the country in areas like agriculture and infrastructure. Other agreements signed include protocols for the importation of durian and renewable energy policies. The Information and Communications Technology Department also signed a memorandum of understanding with its Chinese counterpart to boost the Philippines' digitalization efforts. MOUs were also signed to support tourism, trade, and to ensure bilateral cooperation of the two nations from 2023 to 2025. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
Majority of Filipinos, however, believe that the Marcos administration should work with the United States to defend the West Philippine Sea. A Pulse Asia survey shows that 84% of Filipinos believe the Marcos administration should work with the United States to strengthen security cooperation and defend the country's national sovereignty in the West Philippine Sea. The survey was conducted on November 27 to December 1 last year and was commissioned by Stratbase ADR Institute. Aside from the U.S., 52% of Filipinos also believe that the administration should work with Japan 25% with Australia, 24% with the UK, 23% with South Korea, and 20% with China. For Strat-based President Dindo Manhit, the results indicate that the Philippines must continue to work with existing allies and also forge relationships with new ones in order to address issues in the West Philippine Sea. He notes that based on public interest, the Philippines will be able to practice an independent foreign policy by working closely with friends, allies, and partners.
Let's talk more about this survey as well as President Marcos' state visit to China with Strat-based President Professor Dindo Manhit. Welcome to The Big Story, Mr. Manhit.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Gretchen.
Dindo, before anything else, your evaluation of President Marcos' foreign policy and his visit to China.
Of course, since the start of the administration, Robbie, President Marcos has defined his foreign policy as one that is independent. And he has shown it through his continuous engagement of different nations and its leaders. And this week, it's engaging with China. So what's critical is what policy should simply reflect what our national interest is and what our national priorities are. So we hope that all these discussions, engagements with other countries would really lead to things that are important to the Filipino people, economically, defense and security-wise also.
Yes, but in the month and in the few weeks leading up to this visit at the start of 2023 to China, there was a lot of tension, a lot of episodes of that position and that policy being tested, a lot of tension in South China Sea, contested areas, islands where there was a lot of reports about China further being aggressive. How do you think President Marcos handled this visit in the context of his foreign policy and what went on in the past month?
It's important that he should continue, and I think he continues to assert our rights, protect our territorial integrity in terms of policy pronouncements. But his engagement with China this week reflects that there is an opportunity for us to really have stronger engagement, but we need to extract what we call respect. And this respect is something that we need to see in the next few weeks. If there are really opportunities to bring down the level of conflict or risk, no? But on our part, that's why we continue to conduct the studies. What Philippine public tells us, or the Filipino public tells us, is that we cannot engage with China, who is our security threat, but we can only best engage with them if we continue to be strong by strengthening our military, especially Navy and the Coast Guard, and also strengthening our partnership and alliances with countries that share our values on a rules-based international order, which has generated victory for us in the 2016 arbitral award. I hope the president should continue to view it from that broader perspective to more strategic perspective than this simple visit with China that might simply lead to more MOUs, memorandum of agreement, just like what we saw in the 6 years of President Duterte.
President Marcos has said that he has brought up the issues with harassment to our fishermen in the West Philippine Sea, and he has said that China has agreed to stop all of those incidents. The question is, given the history of our bilateral talks, can we trust China on this?
80% of Filipinos would say, and this is not Mr. Manhit, 80% of Filipinos would say year after year that they don't trust China because there's consistency in the way they have disrespected our territories, they have respected our exclusive economic zones, they have disrespected our maritime rights as given to us by international laws. And we live in a civilized world right now, Gretchen, whereby international laws define a rules-based international system.
Okay, maraming salamat. That was Strat-based President Dindo Manhit.
Coming right up, the country's inflation rate soars to its highest level in over 14 years. Has inflation reached its peak? We'll get some insights on that from Security Bank Chief Economist Robert Dan Roses when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
fast? Speaking all right? Okay.
Absolutely fine.
Good. And when it's injected into the breast in the patient, it's picked up by the lymphatic. And the other thing it does is it provides an audio signal. As the probe approaches iron, which is in the mag trace, it magnetizes the iron and creates a signal, and then you get a very loud audio cue. And you can see on the machine that we've maxed out. It's quite nice actually, because you can see the numbers coming down when the probe moves away.
So you can hear the signal from here. So some mag trace has made it into this lymph node. And we know that because it looks a bit rusty coloured, and also because there's a signal.
I thought we'd talk about the operation a bit now that it's been a few months and find out how you're feeling.
I have about a 2-inch cut where the cancer was, and then a slightly longer cut where the lymph nodes came out, just to check that they were okay and it hadn't spread. And they healed fairly quickly, really. They weren't.
You're watching The Big Story here on One News.
Did you buy something lately and was shocked at how much its price had gone up? Well, don't be, because inflation in the Philippines has reached its highest level in more than 14 years. The Philippine Statistics Authority reports that inflation in December rose to 8.1%, more than double from the 3.1% recorded in December 2021. The December print brought the year-to-date average at 5.8%. That surpasses the government ceiling of 2 to 4%, but hitting its assumption for the entire year, which took into account higher food and transport costs. Last month's consumer price index was also the quickest since the 9.1% print logged back in November 2008. The PSA says the faster inflation in December was driven mainly by higher increments in the indices of food, non-alcoholic beverages, and restaurants and accommodation services. Here to give us his insights on the latest inflation figures, we have with us Security Bank Assistant Vice President and Chief Economist Robert Dan Roses. He joins us via Zoom. Good evening. Welcome to The Big Story, Mr. Roses.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Gretchen.
Sir, I guess what people are asking is this going to keep going up? What can we expect in this coming quarter, if not in this coming year?
Well, what we saw in the December print was actually, inflation seems to be peaking. No? The big takeaway there is we saw a slowdown in headline inflation, but an acceleration in the core inflation side. No? Headline inflation actually grew by 0.3% month on month in the November to December period. No? That's much slower than the 0.9% it posted during the October to November period. No? So month on month seems to be that inflation is actually on the way down, with transport costs offsetting on the back of lower oil prices and stronger peso, no, for the month. On the other hand, though, if you take away the volatile oil and energy food prices, no, we're seeing a rise in core inflation, no? And that indicates price increases were more widespread, no? And are not just limited to certain sectors or goods, as businesses may have taken advantage of strong demand during the peak holiday season.
With core inflation rising, do you expect the BSP to increase rate hikes any soon? What was your forecast on that for the year?
Well, to ascertain that inflation, including the core, could be induced to slow further, the central bank will need to continue to increase interest rates, no, in order to maintain price stability. There will be a post-holiday consumption slowdown, and also some favorable base effects, no, because the headline inflation is based on that. No? There will be favorable base effects from the high inflation level since March 2022. We could expect some elevated levels still in the first half, no? But like I said, the base effect will kick in and the rate could likely fall within the 2% to 4% inflation target by the middle of the year. No? This actually gives the central bank some wiggle room to diminish the size of hikes so as not to slow down domestic growth too much now while still driving home the inflation fight. With this, given the current headline inflation print, that's suggested by BSP can opt for a 25 basis point hike in its policy meeting in February, and probably another 25 bips in March, following an expected similar size hike by the US Fed.
Yeah, sorry, you touched on it a bit already, but if you could expound on it in our efforts to tame inflation, what are the implications for our growth targets for 2023? Throwing ko na rin din ng peso. What does this all mean for the peso?
Okay, if headline inflation is slowing but core inflation is rising, like what we are seeing now, and could probably see in the next 2 months, that could indicate that the overall price level is being influenced by temporary or one-off factors, which are causing food and energy prices to fluctuate. So, for instance, you have headline inflation could be slowing because of the dip in energy prices, while core inflation is going up because of increasing costs in other sectors of the economy. And that could be a function of the lagged effects of earlier inflation levels. The latter could be a cause for concern. Rising core inflation indicates that price increases have become more widespread, and that's not just limited to food and energy. So the resort, of course, by the central bank will be to tame inflation via monetary tools available at its disposal. But what's important as well is a complementary fiscal response. So we had that already with the signing of, I think, an executive order that extends exceptions to tariff for certain food items. So that actually will help in the fight against inflation. But given that we have already hike rates, policy rates by several percent in 2022, the lag effects will be felt. So that could eventually lead to a slight slowdown in terms of business activities. The implication to the peso actually will be, what we are seeing now is a very different response by the FX markets. As of late, it has been greatly influenced by movements in the dollar index, the DXY.
Sir,
it's very close to, sorry.
Sir, I think yung in normal speak po, gusto pong malaman ng mga tao, bababa po ba yung presyo ng sibuyas? Kasi 700 do isang araw, naging 600. Pababa na ba yung trend?
It all depends on the supply. I think the supply is coming in via that extension of the tariff exemption. So that should come in, and I think it's more on. There's something more to do with increased demand and some limited supply that was available in November. Given that we had a spate of calamities, natural calamities, including storms that affected the supply. So I think the price trend, onions will go down. I think the weight of onions in terms of the December inflation reading is quite small, but it's still a concern nonetheless. I would be much concerned if it were rice, but the rice has been going down. So we have that going for us positively. But in terms of the other ingredients, I think, right now it's still limited, but I think the trend will be going down, probably by the end of this quarter.
All right, so pwede nga extra rice, pero wala mo ng sisig. Good for our New Year's resolution. Ay, hindi pala, hindi ko sure. Maraming salamat po, Security Bank Assistant Vice President and Chief Economist Robert Dan Roses. The big story will be right back. Keep it here on One News.
So what you're looking at here are the remains of an ancient Christian monastery. We think it was probably established about a generation before the rise of Islam, and it continued to be occupied for about 3 generations after the revelation of the Quran. It's important because it's one of very few sites like this found in the Arabian Peninsula. We have a site of similar date at Sia Baniyas in Abu Dhabi, and there are about 5 other sites of this kind in the Arabian Gulf. I think what it reminds us of is that there's this really fascinating forgotten chapter of Arab history. We know that the Arab tribes who lived here in this region and more broadly in Eastern Arabia were Christian at the time of the rise of Islam. And that that some of them continued to be Christian for up to 3 generations after the rise of Islam. And I think that's important because it speaks of a tolerant society in which people of different faiths could coexist, possibly even tribal groups with different sectarian communal affiliations would coexist together in this area. We have some different theories about this. It might just simply be a kind of water cistern for drinking water.
You're still watching the big story here on One News. Before we go, who says a bilao can also be used for art? An artist from Cavite has been trending on social media after using bilao for her artworks. Meet Sheni Tan Felix. She calls her art as a formang bilao Pilipina. Some of her artworks range from different themes and scenic views in the country, and she says that her style was only an experiment after she ran out of materials and couldn't go to buy during the COVID-19 lockdowns. Sheni's bilao art is now worth 2,500 pesos up to 6,000 pesos depending on the size. Those interested can message her on her Facebook page and even watch her vlog.
And that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, The Philippine Star, and Business World Online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more analysis. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. I'm Gretchen Ho. Stay safe, Philippines.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.